Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I'm with Nowcast SA in San Antonio. Oh yes, right, thank you. Right, I've been telling everybody to do that for 2 days. You'd think I would remember. Yeah, this one's right there. And we do a lot of video. And we, some people refer to us sort of like as a local C-SPAN, and others say sort of like public television on the web. We have streamed from more than a couple hundred places like San Antonio. We're just completely mobile. And last year, 90 places alone. This year we're on track to 200 hours of local programming, just in live streaming, not counting our short feature videos. And it came about in part because of community demand. We did it, we covered stuff, and then people came up to us and said, how much would it cost for us to have you come and do this? And so we did have to figure it out. And ultimately, I'm really delighted it changed our revenue mix. We were 92% grant, 8% in kind. Now we're 48% grant, 48% underwriting, sponsorships, and corporate donations, largely due to the fact that we're doing a lot of live webcasts of community events that people think are really important.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Good evening. First of all, to you, Charlotte, and to all of the Nowcast staff, to Chairman Andrews and the Board of Directors, congratulations. Happy birthday for 4 years of Nowcast SA. Just a few years ago in San Antonio, those of us on this side of the aisle, public servants as well as our citizens, often felt like they were in the middle of the riddle of, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? When democracy happens and nobody really watches, what happens? Nowcast SA is so special and so important to our local democracy because it has shone a light on what actually happens in the decision-making process, the policy-making process, and that's what we see, but also has played a great role in showing high school graduations, Luminatia, a whole host of other events that have tremendous community appeal and that are now accessible to the community in a way that they just were not before. And I just wanted to come this evening and to say a big thank you for that.
So, that was last Monday, and it made me cry. So what does it take? Here's our big brothers up the street, Texas Tribune. They've decided that after, you may have seen that live stream of Wendy Davis and the filibustering in the end of the state legislature, and the Texas Tribune carried that. They were carrying the state capitol signal out, which the state capitol could at any time shut down. State government could shut down because that wasn't their signal. So now they've decided that they want to be mobile and go live stream too. And they've got a Kickstarter up, and they're looking for 60 to help them go live stream. And if that gives most of you pause, it gives me pause too. It's not really necessary. What does it cost? So in 2009, we set up our rig for live streaming. We went out and bought a TriCaster for $10,000. We bought 3 JVC HD video cameras for $10,500 total, and a boatload of cables, cases, and stuff for another $5,000. So about $25,500. The good news is our TriCaster, well, the bad news is our TriCaster is obsolete now, but we could replace it for $1,000. So, or not. My husband is over there streaming with 3 $650 HD Canon video cameras, Wirecast Studio software, which takes the place of the TriCaster because it switches cameras, and a bunch of other stuff and cables and cases and adapters and stuff. Probably about an $8,000 investment. The other thing you can do is use just one camera, firewire straight into a Mac, and stream straight out of that, or a camera with whatever adapter it will give you straight into a PC and stream straight out of that. We do that for Rackspace Hosting, asks us to live stream 3-day startups over the weekend at Geekdom in San Antonio, and we just do one camera, one laptop, and it brings the cost down considerably. You could do it with that kind of camera. You could do it with one of our $3,500 cameras, and so you bring the cost down to the cost of a laptop and a camera. Or you could do what we did when the students at Lanier High School said they wanted to try to set the record at a tamalada, making tamales, and we gave them our equipment to document it, and then we just took a laptop, a Mac, turned it around, eyesight in the Mac, and streamed just like that. So that's the bottom end of it. You don't have to spend $60,000. You can spend a lot less than that and get a really good result.
Who's got questions?
Okay, so let's talk money. Yeah, so people said, how much would it cost? And I was like, So at first we charged $1,500 for a day-long live stream. And then we said, it's not working. So then we went up to $2,000 for a day-long live stream. And I costed that out, and I costed it out based on depreciation on equipment, and based on my labor charges, and based on this and this and this. And by the way, we have really expensive workers' comp.
Who are you charging?
Now we're up to $3,000 a day for a full day rate, and about $2,500 for half a day. And however, there are times when the citizens in District 5 pass the hat and give me $113 cash to cover candidates for them, and I take it. Okay, so the big things are being paid for by, the day-long things are being paid for. The Chamber of Commerce underwrote the Mayor's State of the City address. Methodist Healthcare Ministries, which cares very much about underwrites all of our health stuff, Affordable Care Act, all of those kinds of casts, and we're doing tons of Affordable Care Act with these in town who want to have a civic event like as children live streamed, and so they'll find an underwriter for that. Hospitals in town, stuff like that. So it's coming from all over. Yeah.
What's your average?
How good of a right here in front of you? How good of a connection do you need to get this to work? I mean, I've experimented with this myself, and Wi-Fi connections seem to just never work. And do you always have to have a wired connection?
Wi-Fi is completely inadequate. You can't use Wi-Fi. You'll get knocked off.
And what are some of the challenges of working with somebody's wired connection?
At least 1 megabit per second upload speed. Go to speedtest.net and check it, and that will tell you what your upload speed is, and that's the most important. 1.5 is really the bottom end to get a quality live stream, but Wi-Fi, even if it's really, really fast, it fluctuates. And particularly when everybody comes in the room, the Wi-Fi in here right now is not fast. It's fast when nobody's here. We have also been able to use clear 4G WiMAX, and I can climb up on the roof and put clear 4G WiMAX on and you can run Cat 5 up to 300 feet before you start dropping signal. And so we can use that to get a live stream out of places that absolutely have no other means of internet. But Wi-Fi is a bad thing. It will be a really bad experience for everybody. We also stream in, because of the plugin that we get from Livestream, we stream in HTML5, so you don't need an app to watch it. So that means you can watch it on any device. People have watched on PlayStations and on Nintendo Wiis. And we've seen people in like Aguascalientes, Mexico, watching on BlackBerry. So I mean, it's really, really accessible. Some people we streamed high school graduations for San Antonio Independent School District, which is one of the poorest school districts in the state. 93% of the kids are eligible for free lunch. So that's part of why we also want to make sure we get into mobiles, because many people whose income is low have mobiles access to internet and not home access to internet. So what we find is we get the biggest traffic during that time, and that traffic comes from, as I said, even Mexico, all over San Antonio, across Texas, but even really, really seriously inside of San Antonio. And more than 50% of our traffic this year was from mobile devices for the high school graduations.
If somebody's brand new to video, what's a good resource for them to get some tips on how to shoot well? And how do you bend up that learning curve quick?
The biggest thing if you're going to shoot video is to get a tripod, and that is whether you're shooting video from your smartphone or whether you're shooting video from a regular digital camera that shoots some video, is just get a tripod. Because the easiest way to not look like an amateur is to make the video not be shaky. So if you can plan it, that's the most important thing, and then other things will come to you as you watch your video, like pan slowly. We use more than one camera because that gives us the option of cutting to another camera while another camera focuses in. So you're never going to see us go zoom or boom. And doing things nice and slowly is really it's really the key. Not going too fast.
So sound. I didn't hear you say anything about sound.
Oh. Yeah, that's really important, and I apologize for missing it. Thank you so much. We don't roll with our own sound. We're at the mercy of house audio, and that has meant that my latest most extraordinary hire is a guy who has installed sound systems and is also a videographer. So he can almost debug any sound system going when we walk into someplace. But quite frankly, it doesn't matter how good the video is. If the audio sucks, the video sucks. So the sound system is really, really important. And we've almost never, I don't think we've ever gone any place where we didn't test at latest the day before. With a complete live test using house audio and streaming up, because testing even any one piece of that and leaving one piece out is a resultant disaster. So you have to test the audio, and it really helps if there's a good audio person in the house. And most universities, we stream from universities all the time. They have good house audio people. Schools usually have a reasonable audio situation. And then if you can't, even when we went down to that one, when I said we turn the camera around and just use the eyesight in the Mac to stream from that, we ended up going out and buying Snowball microphone, which is a nice omnidirectional microphone, really good quality, because that makes all the difference in the world as opposed to having tinny kind of chirpy stuff coming in the computer's microphone. So a really good microphone makes a huge difference.
Well, when you finish running your videos, okay, and the show's over and everything, do you archive them for later viewing, and do you monetize those separately?
Do archive them. We don't monetize them separately, but it matters a whole lot to a sponsor. So a sponsor the other day wanted to know what's my ROI for doing this, and we went back and looked at a video that a live stream we did last September, a year ago. Legal Women Voters did a panel on the Affordable Care Act right after the Supreme Court decision. They had a Trinity University professor come in and give a very unbiased look at what the state of the Affordable Care Act is. And it's been a year, and so we went back and took a look at it. And at the forum, they had maybe 200 people there at the forum. But since we put it up on YouTube after we webcast it, it's been seen by 9,400 people. And the average viewing time, across those 9,000, is 15 minutes, except for the person in Afghanistan who watched it for the full 90 minutes. So for anyone who is trying to say, what's the return on this? That's pretty substantial, and it makes people say, okay, even though we may only have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 100 people in the live audience, it's the long tail. That's also the case with the high school graduations. We've gotten underwriting from Rackspace Hosting and then from the Department of Education to slice out just the valedictorian speeches and put them up on YouTube and put them on DVDs so that they can take them into schools and let third graders see someone who looks like them graduating as a valedictorian. So it's monetizing it in that sense, but it's also, gives other people a sense of why they want to underwrite another webcast.
So what are you using on the back end once you sort of get the uplink to somewhere, who's distributing the video for you? Which service are you using for?
So when we're live, we use Livestream, and part of the reason that we use Livestream is that my experience with them has been that we can be at a community meeting that lasts 4 hours and they won't drop us, and Ustream drops after 60. Ustream drops after 60 minutes. So like clockwork, they just drop you. So if we're going to stay up for 4 hours, it matters to me that they not drop. And Livestream's the one that works the best for us. We used to use Kite, but they got eaten up by somebody or other. And it costs us $3,000 a year to get Livestream premium channel, and I think it's totally worthwhile. There's also telephone support from 9 Eastern until 7 o'clock at night, and that's worth an awful lot to me. Although we haven't, it's usually been user error, but still, it's really nice to be able to call them. They're terrific. But then the question is, we put everything up on YouTube too, and because people don't find it, or they're not looking for it on Livestream, they're Googling it on YouTube. So we need to make sure that it gets found. Before we were allowed to upload, we can upload 2-hour videos now to YouTube, and before we did a lot with Vimeo and Blip, but not so much anymore. Vimeo is good if you need to put it behind a password protect, which we don't usually do. But. So actually, at Monday, at our birthday party, we launched a membership program because right now our mix of revenue is 48% grants, 48% underwriting sponsorships and corporate donations, and we really need to ramp up the individual donations. And so we did a become a member, and it's really I think a nifty little package, and everything from student and periodista to Newshound and Geek for Good. And I think I have high hopes for it. And part of the reason I do is that people at the party said thank you, because I always wondered how we could support you more. So that was really terrific.
And then my second question, just a curiosity, between the English and Spanish video, if you do both, which one seems to get the higher click-through rates and visibility for you? If you do a lot of
English media, but we try as often as possible to do things in both languages and give people a choice. And we don't try very hard to give people text in English and Spanish. When I worked at the San Antonio newspaper's online operation, and we were translating Spurs games into text into Spanish, the only people who were reading them was Manu Ginobili's fans in Argentina. So in San Antonio, people want to listen to Spanish, but they don't want to necessarily read Spanish. So we try as often as possible, and also to make it accessible, or people know in the community that it's there. That's the other challenge.
We've got time for one more, and it looks like it's Rick.
Have you thought at all of trying to sell 30-second clips of your reports to the local TV channels?
I think that would be a really good idea. The local TV channels, as I said, sometimes look at us as local C-SPAN. So when we do the budget hearings, they're like monitoring the budget hearings from the station, and the first year they actually said, can we use the video on the air? And we were pleased to have the credit on the air and get that marketing from having it on the air and having our logo in it in the video that they used. This year they didn't look for any, but I think that would be a really good idea to get them to purchase it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Charlotte, thank you so much to you and Will for all of your just amazing work in capturing all this. That's
Do you need this?
Up next, we have Teresa Schmedding, who leads the American Copy Editor Society, and she was the instigator of an ebook that came out earlier this year, and there was a working group of about 20 journalists around the country, what we've sort of informally called the Plagiarism Project, and that sounds like we were trying to get better at. We're really trying to put out a statement that, even in this new internet age when it's so easy to copy and paste things, that it's not okay to steal other people's work. And she's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Well, as Dylan said, I'm the president of the American Copy Editors Society. I'm also the deputy managing editor for digital for the Daily Herald Media out in the suburbs. I have like an hour-long presentation on plagiarism and fabrication, but as a copy editor, I kind of edited it down to high. And thank you. Now, I'm your low-tech presenter for today. I figured if I had 5 minutes, you didn't want to watch me spend 20 hooking up my laptop and firing up PowerPoint. So as Dylan said, we were very concerned about the increasing number of cases of plagiarism and fabrication. And sort of like the weather, which most people say Mark Twain said that everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it, which I believe is not plagiarism, but misattribution. Somebody else actually said that. But we sort of wanted to try to take a stab at doing something about the weather. It's a big problem when people steal your work. And you guys are, I'm assuming, does anybody here have a lot of money, extra money that you're throwing around? A lot of extra time in your day? No? You're working your butts off to get good content and good material, and then you put it out there on your website, and 10 other people will come along and copy it and put it on their website, and you get no revenue off of it. So we wanted to try to do something about it. Dylan was a key part of our group. We got all the major journalism organizations in the United States and Canada to band together, put together representatives. We researched and took some tough positions and put out a book called The Truth and Nothing But. And it's a free ebook that you can get online. If you need more information, you could just go to copydesk.org/plagiarism. All the material is on there. And Dylan actually has a presentation to put up on your guys' website that is my hour-long presentation that you are probably happy you don't have to sit through. Anyway, so all these guys got together and put together this book. And it's interesting, there's actually a researcher from the University of Florida called Norm Lewis. He has a doctorate, and his entire research for his entire career has been on nothing but plagiarism and fabrication. So he has a lot of good, hard data. The question that we had is it happening more frequently, or are we just catching it more often? And I'm here to tell you, I don't know. We think it is happening more frequently, especially among a younger generation, and especially as lines have blurred with distance, and there are other cultures beyond the United States in which plagiarism is not really something that's taught or people are really concerned about. So copying and pasting is just the norm. And that is sort of the norm among youth today, especially when all our content is free on the internet, that they sort of view it as it's free, so it doesn't cost things, so it's available to anybody. I can with it. So it is increasing, we believe, but it is clear, never known in Arlington Heights, Illinois, if somebody in San Antonio, cut and paste 2 paragraphs out of my story about the Corn Boil Festival, I would have never known if it wasn't for the internet now. But also, nobody in San Antonio would have ever had access to my amazing, wonderful story about the corn boil, in which they could pick up the 2 quotes from kids who said they like corn and, stuff like that. But with this book, our hope is, the problem that makes it difficult, as I'm sure you guys are aware, is, plagiarism is not really a legal issue. It's an ethical issue. Copyright is a legal issue. Plagiarism is an ethical violation. And courts have continuously held that you can't copyright the facts. And that's why it's very difficult to prosecute or to file cases and win them for copyright violation when it comes to the words that you've put in stories. It's much easier with a photo or a video or a painting. But for the words that you do covering a crime accident or a tornado, you're reporting the facts, and you can't really copyright the facts the courts have held. So they're in a tough position. And what we wanted to do with this book was have all our organizations sign off on it in support of journalism ethics in association with plagiarism and fabrication, and then put that book in your hands for free so that you can use it when you're...
And you can copy it.
Pardon me?
And you can copy it.
Yes, you can copy it. And you can download it. And yes, you can do anything you want with it. Please just don't make fun of the big shield on the cover. The first day of the Plagiarism Summit, somebody said, "What's that big tongue doing on the cover of the book?" And my designer just like went right into the ground and died. So please don't ask me about the big tongue. We're out to lick plagiarism and fabrication. But anyway, I know that Dylan had a case where somebody lifted his material, and in his argument with him about lifting his material, he referenced the book, gave him a link to the book, and said, we as ethical journalists all agree that we're going to own our own content and we're not going to steal other people's content. And so we wanted this book to be a tool that you could use fighting to protect your content. And I would think that the key finding or the key recommendation of the book is just attribute everything. Just attribute everything. Especially
your work.
Yeah. I mean, especially in this day of fabrication, how do you really know that I even went to the corn boil? I was actually, down at Buddy Guy's Legends having a beer. And I just wrote it from my phone and filed it into the newsroom. So, it's very important not only to cover your own butt, but, to be ethical in the material that you're using, to attribute it and link back to the originating source. I mean, I think it's the same as if you just took somebody's quote and took the quote marks off it and said it was your own. Well, people are less interested that you're the person who said, that the war in Iraq is over. They're probably more interested that George Bush said the war in Iraq is over, and you would attribute that quote to him. And the same as when you're aggregating material or picking up material from other sources and saying this news organization is reporting 10 are dead, this one is reporting 15, you should attribute that material and link back to those originating articles. And there's no reason why you can't do that in a digital world. I mean, that's the nice thing. The digital stuff some people don't like it. I think it's awesome because it gives us tools to always, tie back to originating sources and share information and not be thieves. Have I hit 5 minutes yet?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, thank you. So I do encourage you to check it out, download the book. The link is in the presentation. It'll be on your website.
It's already there on the front page.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's been there for months. So.
Okay. And Dylan did an absolutely excellent job, and we were really happy to have Lion involved in the project as well.
One of the important things I think about it is that a lot of it is framed as a positive statement about making our work better. It's not just don't do this, don't be bad. It's not just don't copy, it's do attribute, because that not only pays respect to your colleague who actually broke that little tidbit of news that you're putting into your own, it helps your reader. It makes you better at what you do.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we were extremely negative on was fabrication. Don't do it.
Unless it's really good.
It's never, no, it's never acceptable. And I'll give these to you. I actually, if you ask a question, I have a book on them. And the flash drives aren't protected, so you could take the book off and then use whatever you want the flash drive's for. And I do believe, let me check. No, the tongue is not on here. Sorry. There's no tongue. Okay, question.
Old school, so I printed out your book. Luckily, I was at work, so I wasted their paper, but...
No, it wasn't a waste. I'm sure it was the most
Another ethical-
valuable piece of paper ever.
The thing, it prints about this big, but for some reason it printed out on the largest sheet of paper we had, and so I had these enormous scissors. Anyway, it took me about an hour to process your book into a readable book.
Oh, sorry.
It's a fantastic... just what I wanted to put in a plug for the book.
Yeah.
It's got an appendix with 10 or 20 years worth of all the major plagiarism events, and it's just a terrifying read. But detailed
plagiarism and
detailed
fabrication.
appendix that's worth the effort.
It's horrifying. Craig Silverman of the Poynter Institute actually prompted this project by writing a blog called Journalism's Summer of Sin, and he was recounting all these various cases, and he's like, somebody should do something, and so he said, okay, we will.
Anyone?
Yes.
Is there any part of a typical news story, if there is such a thing, that is copyrightable if the facts can't be copyrighted?
I mean, you can always take the case to court, and everything that we publish on dailyherald.com and print in our paper is copyrighted. The question is, can you successfully argue it without going completely bankrupt? And in general, the courts have not done a good job in citing in our favor on it. But they're your interpretation of the facts. So sometimes if you can show a unique writing bug, I'm not going to win that argument. If I said really tall man with printing down the street, sunlight dappling through the tree leaves and nobody's reading it, but if you up all those same words, then that's my interpretation of the facts and my spin that I've put on them. But as journalists, we're supposed to be more objective, so that makes it more challenging. But there have been some cases that people have won, especially in magazine articles, where the totality, the courts have said, you've lifted enough of this, or this book excerpt that you have violated copyright.
You piqued my interest with the blue hair. Can you keep that story going?
With the what?
The blue hair.
But that would be Chris Wien, former president of ACES. He used to dye his hair blue on the last day of conference, or maybe it just naturally turned that way. Usually after 3 days of a conference, we're all a little oxygen deprived.
Two things. One is, if you haven't all read it, Stanford University has a really, really good primer on fair use. What is and isn't fair use, and it's a 4-part test for fair use, and it's complex, but you should read it. The other thing is, have you thought about producing like a really, not a book, not something that you've got to be motivated to read, but something that's sort of much more digestible in a web page format guide for bloggers on what is and is not acceptable about taking content? I run Repost, I run a syndication service, and so we're in the process. We routinely get people stealing content they legally syndicated from us. And, we go the FCA takedown route. We don't sue them, but we'll send a takedown to their ISP and make their site go off if they don't take it down, which actually seems to be much more effective than anything else. But it'd be nice if somebody wrote a nice little primer for bloggers on that.
That's a good idea. I mean, one of the things that we're hoping to do is, we got all these people together. We wrote this book. We're putting it out there free. The next step is for you guys to download it, use it, and come back and tell us what can we do as journalism organizations to better help you with your jobs. And so that's an excellent suggestion. Steve Buttrey from Digital First Media is actually, everybody in their newsrooms are now required to take a plagiarism quiz to ensure that they understand the exact boundaries of what's plagiarism and what isn't. We at the Daily Herald are developing our first formal aggregation policy, because when the news is breaking and we all want to, be the first to report the Supreme Court's decision on the Health Care Act, we're going to be picking it up from other people. And then that's usually not when you're making your best decisions. And we'll probably also put together some sort of plagiarism quiz. But we were talking about making a plagiarism type quiz available on the website. We're working with Poynter as well, that they're developing a curriculum on plagiarism and fabrication that'll be free to college students, that they'll be offering to universities to help supplement their curriculum, to help increase learning there. And so your suggestion is a good one. So I'll take it back. Or Dylan, can you on that? Okay.
On the case. Broken Glass was about fabrication.
Yes.
Are they recommend maybe to show like citizen journalists to help?
Glass is probably the best. We did require everybody in our newsroom. That's a good one. What are there other movies that you guys are familiar with that you think would be good?
Yeah,
That's a good one.
I think that was season 3 or 4. I don't remember, but it was excellent. 5? Season 5?
I also think that the last season of The Newsroom is a good example of how you can talk yourself into making a bad decision when you really... Skeptical editing is so critical. You need to be able to look at all your content and say, how do we really know that this is true? And you always need to look at yourself and question, how much do you really want this? Enough that you're putting blinders on. You might be willing to live that one quote or that one pilot's name or, this one thing. And it's easy to talk yourself into bad decisions in a breaking news and a competitive news environment.
I just had a quick follow-on to your point about reporting copyright violators to their ISP.
Mhm.
Another option you have is if they're running Google ads on their site, you can report them to, there's a Google ads won't run on a site that's violating copyright. So if you report them to them, they'll shut down their Google ads, and that gets their attention pretty quickly.
Have they been really responsive? Is Google pretty responsive on that?
They are pretty responsive on that, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. Sorry. We did address this issue in the book. We tried to touch on a lot of great issues. This was one of them. And the reality is, if I work for the Daily Herald and I write that story for the Daily Herald owns that story. They can do anything they want with it forever, and I can't. So they did get together, and the decision was that in general, company property can be used by the company, and that's not plagiarism. Same as if, you quit and now I'm covering, the LA Council, and I might be looking back in the archives of the newspaper and pulling material and putting it together on a current issue. That's not plagiarism. That's researching and pulling material from your own company. Similarly, self-plagiarism that there's been some drama about. If you're a freelancer and you wrote a restaurant review and you sold it to one company and then you retooled it and sold it to another company, or you wrote a blog entry and then you retooled it into a news story, can you self-plagiarize? And the book says no, you really can't plagiarize your own content. But, I think
on that, I think you need to be upfront with the person who's paying you. What's happening here.
Right. And so I think our ethical standards need to be up here, and we need to be really clear with people that this so-and-so said in a story 5 years ago that they thought that the sky was blue, or in a restaurant review that ran 6 months ago, or this restaurant review was originally written 6 months ago and we've updated it and da-da-da-da. So I think that while technically copyright violation issue, I don't think it's ethical. So I think we do need to be very honest and clear with our readers where information is coming from. And if it came from an interview 5 years ago, we should say it came from an interview 5 years ago, because the person may have changed their mind, they may be dead. As you said, the sky may no longer be blue. Apparently it's humid in Chicago.
Did anybody check today? Can you even see it?
Huh?
You can't even see what the color of the sign is today. So.
I know. Today's a good day to go up in the Don Hancock Tower and you get 50% off tickets, and then you can just see clouds. I have done that when I was really poor and it wasn't worth it.
Good time.
Any more questions?
Kind of an observation, but we've had, I'm Doug Hardy with Connecticut News Junkie, and we've had quite a few people, the publishing business, without having any knowledge of plagiarism, and they just take all the entire story and they post it. It happens a couple times a year, and sources available to send a site takedown notice and all that stuff. I don't know if anybody's ever had to do that, but it's a pretty powerful thing. And some of the free platforms will actually just, like WordPress, will go in and take down the story, but not kill their site. So I think in my experience, you can get into a big pissing match, or you can reach out to them and say, hey, there are rules on this. And then you, rather than being, argumentative about it, you can kind of show them the way to go, and then they'll start actually aggregating and understanding it and helping you grow your own site with their readers. But typically it's somebody that's just brand new. And anyway, before you get into lawyers, try and ask. Anyway.
And that's our hope, is that you can say, hey, this is an industry standard. The Online News Association, SPJ, APME, ASNI, ACES, Lion, anybody else, any other type of acronym you can think of, that pretty much signed on to this book. So you can say, are you the loser? No, with the peer pressure or whatever. But that's what we hope, is that it gives you some backbone.
Hi, I run a news site in Lake Forest, just north of here. And I lately have been getting emails from stories relevant to my community where they actually represent either the subject or one of the sources in the story. I've had 3 or 4 of these from different providers, or quote unquote providers. And each one I've asked, well, what, do you say who you are and that you're representing a source? And they are not. And I just wondered about that, if there's anybody else noticing that? Anybody? I do too. I mean, but I want the third one that came in. I wanted to know what their shtick was.
One of the fastest growing things for revenue generating is what is called native content, which is a nice way of saying sponsored crap. Right, and I know that we're getting ready to put some of it on a special section of our website, looking at from hospitals and things of that nature. So I thought it was interesting. There's a study that's cited in the book that was done among news editors around the country on whether or not they felt that press releases need to be attributed. So, because we get a lot of press releases in, we'll rewrite it and pop it up. Do we need to attribute that? And a lot of people said yes, but also a lot of people said no. And I think, again, that's an ethical standard. You need to be clear with your readers who's generating this content and where it's coming from.
I'm curious about that. Raise your hand if you throw in a news release or something like that, if you're just rewriting the press release. Yeah, if you're entirely basing your story on a press release that you got, and maybe you're throwing in a little bit of background material, but the quote that you're using out of it, do you say said in a news release, or do you just write it as if, who writes it as if you talk to that person?
Well, nobody's gonna.
Thank you. Good.
Nobody here.
Now we can tell how to think of that practice.
But anyway, my information is on their website. So if you have other ideas, you read the book, or you can contact Dylan. If you have additional suggestions, we would love to hear them, because we would sort of like to keep this project going. And I will make a plug for ACES. You came to our conference.
It was fun.
We are in Las Vegas in March 20th to 22nd. And we're doing a bunch of tracks with the theme for digital in the desert. So we're going to be doing some specific training sessions on digital. So if you're not too tired from here, feel free to join us in
we may recover by
Vegas.
Then. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for your questions.
And up next, we've got Ned Berke, who's going to talk a little bit about doing this job in some very adverse conditions.
While Dick helped me. Is this control? While Dick here helps me set up the computer, I will tell you a little bit about Sheepshead Bay and Sheepshead Bites. Sheepshead Bay is a community in Brooklyn. It's right at the southern end of Brooklyn. It's right next to and over up from Coney Island. It's our coverage area, which is about 165,000 households. It's right on the open ocean. It's the first community in Brooklyn actually that's not protected by Queens. So usually we can say Queens is going to get it and we'll be fine. But when Superstorm Sandy happened, that wasn't the case, and we were pretty hard hit by it. And at the same fall into those ends where the media loves to follow the extremely rich people and the extremely poor people, it wasn't being covered very well elsewhere. Issued a mandatory evacuation of the flood zones. And then, I'm actually just going to throw this on and get on with it, and then we will talk a little bit about after the video I did. I put this together for another conference. It's a pretty rough cut, but it got some information in there. 2011, Hurricane Irene was heading to the city. The city, for the first time in recent memory, issued a mandatory evacuation of the flood zones. And then nothing happened at all. And people really, really burned by this. And when Hurricane Sandy happened, that's what they had in mind, and that's what set the stage for the community's attitude and the community's response. Oh, this is going to be nothing. This city is full of wusses. Nothing's going to happen. It's going to be just like Irene. I heard that a lot. We had a comment from a regular reader who wrote, I ain't going, heading to Nathan's now. And of course he was talking about the Nathans in Coney Island, and it was that kind of cynicism that presented our first real problem as community reporters, and also showed us the first few unique tools that we had to combat it that other media outlets don't. So we didn't go with any of the Frankenstorm headline often, but we tempered that, our own cynicism. We tempered that by utilizing one of the tools that really make we have our readers and our audience. So we took a very personal style. People know us by name. They don't refer to me as the editor or the reporter. They refer to me as Ned. And we started talking to them using one of those other tools that we have, is the hyper-engaged way in which we are with social media. We started going back and forth. We would keep an eye on it. We were monitoring them and really paying attention to what was going on. Whenever one of these people came up saying, oh, it'll be just like last year, but we have to impress upon you some logic and reason. And that's sorry. The vast majority of people still stayed home. And it's still a problem that we think about today and have to worry about when the next storm comes, is how do we reach people and how do we impress upon them the importance of their safety. It's a really tough challenge. It's a really tough one, and you don't want to violate your credibility by going over the top and telling people to get out, but you want to be real with them about what the problem is. One of the things I noticed after it is how our own role changed within the community. We were no longer just reporters, but we had to become activists. That's because every little bit of infrastructure that supports our community, whether it's the community board, our in New York City, these operate sort of like town halls, our civic associations, our business improvement districts, the district offices of all of our elected officials, our only public hospital. These were all in the flood zone. There really wasn't any group outside of the flood zone for me to rely on or talk to or anything like that. So their homes, and both the politicians and just people within civic associations. So there was no organizing. They just to really get their head out of the water, so to speak. And media at this time was really just kind of seizing on the areas that they knew. Red Hook, because it's trendy, financial district, because it's the economic engine of the city, the suburbs of New Jersey, because it's where the New York Times writers live, and that's where the resources were following. They were totally following the media, the city agencies and the relief organizations. But the major media never got down to Sheepshead Bay, except for maybe a quick, photo tour thrown in with other coverage, So we had to really get that. And of course, we have to get that anyway. It's important, the story that we're telling. Here we were reporting on these things, and then I was blasting them out to the reporters I know and saying, look at this. You need to get down here. You need to see this. And then I also started turning towards the organizations themselves saying, look. And we even found there were a few organizations in our own backyard that had no idea of the extent of the damage in their own communities. And they were going and they were organizing bus drives out to the Rockaways or to Staten Island to help with, recovery efforts there, but had no idea that the bungalow communities in Sheepshead Bay, were totally, washed away in a sense. We had contacting them, and we also started reaching out to the people we knew in the community who could, host canned food and water and stuff like that, and kind of dole out these resources. And then we started publishing the location of these things. This is in addition to just setting up resource after resource. We created an information exchange network pretty much hours after Sandy, just so that people can reach family members. There was no phones or anything. So you had a lot of people who were not in Sheepshead Bay who couldn't learn anything about Sheepshead Bay outside of Sheepshead Bites. And then so we set up a page for it where they could leave a note, and volunteers within the community, within our readership, we go check on that address for them and then come back and in the comments report on how their family was doing. There were probably a couple dozen people who did that, and I'm glad to say they all had good news to report. And I know several business owners that ended up swimming home in the muck. So we went to the Chamber of Commerce. The president of the Chamber of Commerce to the neighborhood. Through that work, we ended up setting up a merchants association and working hard, and still working hard to this day, getting people to fill out forms, get as many grants as they can. And as a community publication, this is somewhat selfish. If we were the Daily News, we could continue to rely on the advertising from the rest of the city that was unharmed, or the national advertisers, or anything like that. But we're wholly dependent on these small businesses. So what that means is 3/4 of our advertising base was wiped out. We ended up forgiving all outstanding debts and giving free advertising to every standing business for a long time. But really, we needed to get these businesses back on track if we were to continue publishing. These deeply personal bonds that we've made with our readership in terms of themselves, their cynicism, and trying to shake them awake to realize that the threat that things poses to them, it's that personal relationship that helps. And it's also what helps in getting us to move and to hustle and to help these small businesses, and for them to allow us to help them. Because really, when strangers were approaching them, when FEMA people were coming, they said, "Oh, you're never going to give me anything, go away." Well, that's why we got people to hold their hands, and we made the introductions. And I really think a community publication probably does more in the recovery efforts in this than a major media outlet that really have the personal relationships and the stakes in the ground. So, two things. Some of the more boring photos in there, they were in there. Those were actually my insurance photos. I was flooded out as well, and we were reporting from Zone A and lost power in the middle of it. All kinds of problems. So the other thing is, now that I've killed 7 minutes about.
We're running long on all this, so you're not skating out of
I can tell you that I've also brought the wrong presentation, because this was actually made for another conference for journalism educators. And, for them, we were kind of telling them what hyperlocal could do differently, could do better than other sources. How you prepare for a disaster, how you go about doing that. She also wanted to know how I coped being a victim of it, and how I went about reporting while being a victim of it. And there's also other questions, like how do you deal with 2/3 of your advertising base being wiped out? How do you deal with a lot? I'm going to ask you, but I am actually a case study in what not to do. I did everything wrong. I didn't leave. I didn't have backup locations. I didn't even buy flashlights, radios, candles. I told everyone else this. I didn't do any of it. Because I was one of those people. I was saying, nothing's going to happen. I live a 1/4 mile from the water. Maybe we'll get an inch. And that turned out to be 4 feet. It's a big inch. Make sure that you have a backup location to get to if you can get there, and never put yourself at. Our police station flooded. Our hospital was evacuated. Totally lost power. Even their generators went out. Some of the other things are, make sure your mobile phone is powered. And that you have someone you call updates into. Make sure you have someone you trust with, passwords to your site, who can get in and, and keep people informed, even if there are typos. And how do you cope with it? I dove into the story to not cope with it. I didn't want to deal with my own personal issues. And instead, I was working, round the clock. I didn't really sleep for 2 weeks, and eventually crashed and went into a major depression that I didn't talk to anyone about. To talk to people, find someone who you trust and have that relationship with, and just get it out.